That music can only mean one thing, folks. Fans, people everywhere, the millions of people who listen to us.
Except for Miami Heat fans.
Who can
They
get
really are just another team.
Really? They've been humbled.
Yes.
We'll see. It's still, the series is still 1-1.
No, I know.
Okay.
You never count LeBron.
But that's sports. People, if they just tuned in, think they're talking, sports. But we're not talking sports. What are we talking? We're talking film Fanatics, the fastest hour on radio. I'm your host, Bruce Bennett, the film critic for madaboutmovies.org, and of course, the Spectrum and Daily News. I can't talk today.
That's okay.
Oh, wow.
You're flustered. It's Memorial Day weekend.
What is it? Okay.
Your mind is elsewhere.
It must have been those waffles my wife made me today. Oh. And so across from me, as always, is the very handsome Adam Mast, film critic for ZBoneman.com and the Monthly Independent, another fine periodical.
Yeah, so you just recovered.
And we have some wonderful films we're going to talk about today.
And some not so wonderful films.
And maybe some not so wonderful, but there's a great lineup. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Huge weekend. It was a huge weekend. It's still a huge weekend.
Yeah.
Just barely starting. So, Adam, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
We are going to talk about a little film called The Fast and the Furious 6.
I'm fast and curious.
Fast and curious, exactly.
Yes.
We're going to talk about a new animated feature called Epic.
Epic, yes.
Gosh, what was that other one? I forgot. Oh, Hangover 3.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was being funny.
Hangover 3.
I want to talk about it, but I can't remember what happened in it. So
really?
Go figure. And then we're going to talk about a film that Robert Redford directed called The Company You Keep.
Yes.
Then we got some cool topics today. In honor of Fast and Furious, we're going to talk about the greatest car chases ever committed to film.
Yes, there's been a lot of good ones.
There has been. And then we're going to do a topic. I'm really excited to share notes with you on this. The greatest comedy sequels of all time.
That'll be a short
and I
discussion.
think you could count them all on one hand. Sequels are tough as it is, but comedy sequels, man, they're really tough.
Well, in Rotten Tomatoes' top 50 sequels of all time, only 2 or 3 of them were comedies. The rest were dramas, action films.
That's my whole point.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little guerrilla recap, do some weekly power rankings. I'm going to talk about a new film that just started shooting called The Maze Runner, based on a book by, Dashner. The author's name is Dashner. Are you familiar with it? No. You never heard of it? Well, you will be. You will be by the end of the show.
I'm just marveling at Bob's hair.
Yeah,
today.
It's awesome.
I wore a hat because my hair
video?
looks like that. He's out of control.
Well,
but we don't have video today, so
no.
For all people know, we could be sitting here naked.
Yeah, or stuffing
Picture
our face
that,
with cinnamon rolls from Bishop's.
That's probably more likely, and that's why we're not naked. It's because we're sitting here stuffing our faces.
That's good.
It is.
Anyway,
Bishop's Diner, we love that place.
Yes. So, shall we get to it?
Let's get to it.
Well, let's talk about a movie called The Fast and the Furious
I'm giving you sound effects.
Part 6. I like that.
Very
I like that.
low key.
So,
Yeah.
most franchises would be losing steam by the 6th installment. But the Fast and the Furious franchise is just getting started, and I think we can credit director Justin Lin for that.
He hasn't directed all of them, has he?
No, he started with Tokyo Drift, which was the third film. No, number 3.
Number 3? Okay.
Yeah, which I must confess.
I am a little confused.
I didn't see Tokyo Drift.
Right. I didn't see it in the theater.
I have seen 4 through 6. And this guy has acquitted himself as quite the action director. I mean, this guy is no slouch. There's some in this movie in particular, this new one. There's some action sequences in this movie. Let's call a spade a spade. This movie is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It defies the laws of physics.
The main reason people see this film is Vin Diesel. No,
that's not true. But I'll tell you,
he does have his fans, though.
In its ridiculousness, this movie is loads of fun. We talked about G.I. Joe earlier this year, which is pure fantasy and really stupid, but fun. And this movie is better than that. In fact, dare I say, for sheer entertainment value and mindless entertainment, this is my favorite of the series. I would say this was my favorite one. Do we really need to talk about a plot?
No.
You don't think so? Well, I'm going to tell you about it anyway.
There's some good guys and some bad guys.
Well, you've got Dwayne.
And the bad guys want to get the good guys, but good guys have faster cars.
Let's tell them, well, that's kind of true. Let me tell you, just set it up. Very simple. Dwayne Johnson a.k.a. The Rock.
Now, this is the first one he's been in.
No, second. He was in part 5.
See, I even saw that. I don't remember that.
In this one, his agenda is a little more clear in this film.
Good cinnamon roll.
Yeah, it's very good. Wow. So Fast and Furious Part 6 opens up with Dwayne Johnson's Officer Hobbs tracking down Vin Diesel's Dom Toretto. And Dom, played by Vin Diesel, he's sort of retired, I guess you could say. He's a retired thief. He's done everything he set out to prove. And now he's done with that part of his life, you know. He's
gone honest.
Yeah, more or less. Well, it's not. He's just taken all his riches and he's just laying low. He has no interest in pursuing it.
And he knows he can't act.
Exactly.
So.
Oh, come on. Come on. He was good in Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, that's true.
And what about Boiler Room?
That's why he got killed.
That guy's got talent.
Right off. Okay.
Vin, I love you. So anyway, Hobbs recruits Dom and his team to come out of retirement. The team, of course, played by a multicultural cast. Everyone
of women and men.
Yeah, we've got who's in this film? We got Paul Walker, Tyrese, Luke Evans, Tyrese, Michelle
and my
Rodriguez.
new favorite action star, female, Gina Carano.
Gina Carano's in the film. Ludacris and Tyrese, they sort of supply the comic relief in the movie, and they really are. They have great chemistry. So anyway, what on earth would bring Dom out of retirement? And that's one of the
you said it had no plot, yet you're spending a lot of time on the plot.
There's a plot. There's a plot. It's all an excuse to set what people really want to see in motion.
Is it Fast and Furious?
It is Fast and Furious. Yeah. The movie lives up to its name.
Okay.
But why does Dom come out of retirement? That's one of the few twists that this movie has to offer. The trailers have already given away a couple of the twists. So anyway, Dom and crew are hot on the trail of a villain played by Luke Evans, who has something that everyone else wants, because that's how it always is in these movies. And Dom and his crew are the only people quick enough to catch this guy. So that's basically the setup. There are car chases in this movie, Bruce, that are spectacular. There's an extended action sequence on a highway that involves a tank, and again, it's completely ridiculous. There's people jumping from bridges and landing on the concrete unscathed.
Of course.
There's a climax. The climax of this movie, it takes place on an airport runway. There's a huge jet, and the cars are chasing the jet. And this sequence, I looked at my phone. The sequence lasts 16 minutes, and it's really, really spectacular. But what confused me is how the hell long is this runway? They got to be going 80 miles an hour, and the sequence lasts 16 minutes. So I guess it's the world's longest runway. I did the math. It had to be a 20-mile long runway.
I didn't care. It must be fun coming up with these stunt sequences.
Justin Lin's a madman. He's a genius.
Pretty much with technology now, anything that you can think of, you can do. And so they must have a great fun. Okay, then the tank will do this, and then the airplane will do that, and then we'll jump over this. Can we do that? That whole preparation to it must be a blast, just to figure out how
I'm
to
sure,
do it.
And I'm sure it's insane. It takes, something that you watch unfold 15 minutes worth of screen time.
They don't have
it took
time
a year.
for much of a plot.
It took them a year to make, probably just to do that one sequence.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I do have to say, though, we're making fun of it being...
That's what we're saying.
Oh, for sure.
We know the plot.
But there's a spirit. There's a spirit and a...
There's no Oscar worthiness to the cast.
No, there's silly acting, cheesy dialogue, but it doesn't matter.
But
there's an affectionate...
the heart of the film, the stunt sequences, there's definitely effort.
Yeah, and there is a little bit more to it. I'll tell you why I think this resonates. This movie, these movies have a huge fan base. They really do. And it is the action, but there is something else at the heart of this movie. And I know it sounds funny to say, but this movie is about family. It's about loyalty. It's about family. These characters would do anything for each other, and that from frame one, they set the stage, and that's what this movie's about. And even though it is mindless action, I think it resonates with audiences. I think they're looking at that. They're seeing that, and they're liking that.
There's chemistry.
And these people everyone wants to be like that. That's what we aspire to be, and that's what these characters are. I can't,
I aspire to be Barbra Streisand.
There is...
So completely
Do you
different.
really?
Yeah, I do. Don't tell anyone.
You got the nose for it.
Hey, thank you.
I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding. I love Babs. I'm a huge fan. So anyway, Listen, this movie is just a lot of fun. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and it didn't feel like it. It moves at a quick clip, sort of like Star Trek
definitely
Into
one to
Darkness
see
did.
in the theater too.
You know what?
Technological
I saw it in D-Box, and I have to tell you, I plunked down money for 6 or 7 movies in D-Box, and this is the best of the lot. The Megaplex Pineview 10. You can watch it in D-Box, and because of the cars, you feel the rumble in the seats, and it's a lot of fun. There's also great shots where they do these aerial shots coming over Rio de Janeiro, and it feels like you're, the Soaring Over California ride?
Oh, yeah,
it's
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Like you feel yourself, it feels like
Free-falling.
you're kind of floating over these
cool.
cityscapes.
So it gives the audience what they want.
It totally does.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any Fast and Furious fan is going to walk out of this movie disappointed. I'm not a huge fan of the series as a whole, but I really, really enjoyed this movie, even though I didn't get a lot of it connects itself to the other films. And there were parts where I have to admit I did get a little lost because I don't know the whole series through and
It
through.
is a unique franchise in the sense that it seems to be getting popular and making more money with each franchise.
It's crazy.
It's on number 6.
Yeah, this movie is going to have a huge opening weekend. We talked about it
right.
last week. I'm guessing anywhere from probably 90 million plus for its opening weekend.
Which,
That would be my
considering it's
prediction.
up against
Number
some
6.
fairly heavily marketed competition. I
yeah.
mean, I'm not saying. You could make a case that there's quite a bit of overlap between the Fast and Furious audience, and Hangover 3. There's overlap.
Yeah, a
there.
little
One's
bit.
R-rated, one's not. But I'm just saying there's still a lot of the same guys, especially that want to see Fast and Furious, want to see Hangover.
Sure.
3.
Yeah,
too.
I think that's safe to say. So
But I think they've been disappointed by Hangover 2, whereas the Fast and Furious franchise continues to deliver what their target market wants.
Right.
So I think they have a chance of making more money.
And Justin Lin has done some interesting things.
Hangover.
He'll bring a new sort of plot gimmick to each film. Did you see the 5th film?
Yes, I did.
It kind of had a heist thing going on.
The very opening sequence was terrific.
Yeah, and then one of them was sort of trying to
honestly, I
bring
can't
down a
remember
drug
the plot.
pin. Each movie
can't
has
remember
sort
the
of a
plot.
different flavor, but family is definitely at the very
It
heart
seemed
of this
like
movie.
somebody died, but then they came back, or one.
That's happened in every single
something
one of them,
all
pretty
right, I
much.
don't know. Right.
And so I'm giving this movie a recommendation. I'm sure my expectations weren't high; they weren't low. But I just walked away smiling. I thought it was entertaining, and I think Justin Lin really delivers. The action sequences are great. News just surfaced at CinemaCon last month, actually. That Part 7 is slated for next summer, so a 1-year turnaround. In fact, it was enough to drive Justin Lin out of the franchise. He's not coming back.
Oh, really?
He's passed the reins on to James Wan, who did the Saw movies. So,
Whoa, that's
but
interesting.
he also made a movie called Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, which is an action thriller. And this movie sets up what the location for the new film is going to be at the end. So I kind of get an idea of why they're bringing James Wan into the fold. So anyway, yeah, Fast and the Furious 6. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Fun movie. So moving on, let's talk about an animated feature. You can take the family to see this movie for the holiday weekend. Epic.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and set it up?
What most people want to know about an animated feature is who's making it. Is it a Disney movie? No, it's not a Pixar movie. This is made by the people, Blue Sky Studios, who do the Ice Age films. And it's directed by Chris Wedge, who's directed all of the Ice Age films, and an animated movie from a few years ago called Robots, which was rather cute, kind of interesting. And this takes place, it's modern day, but a girl goes back home to so to speak, to live with her father. Something's happened to her mother. We're not sure exactly what. And her father's an absent-minded professor, lives out in the forest, and believes that there's this whole other world of miniature people and civilizations living in the forest. And of course, it's all true.
Of course.
And she gets miniaturized, and she grows, and she finds herself in this little civilization between these leaf people who are trying to protect the forest and these evil people who are trying to destroy it. And now she's one of them because
Sounds
she's
like a parable
size.
a little bit.
Yes, a little bit. And the plot is real simple: forces of good and evil, and the voices are important part of this. Colin Farrell is kind of the manly hero, and Josh Hutcherson, I can never say his name. Hutcherson plays
Hunger
kind of
Games.
he plays like the young renegade rebel of the good guys, and Beyonce Knowles is Queen Tara, and something happens to her. Those are all the good people. Then Christoph Waltz is the leader of the bad people
Because he can't seem to get a role outside of villains.
I love this man. I love his acting. It's fantastic.
I leaned over to
even his vocals.
I leaned over to Sheldon when we were watching this movie. I thought you remember Christopher Lambert? That's who I thought it was from Highlander.
Oh,
there can be only one. That's who I thought it was at first.
And then you've got people like
that's Christoph Waltz.
Pitbull and Steven Tyler and some other great voices.
And Amanda Seyfried and Jason Sudeikis play the father and daughter, and they're great. Their vocal work's outstanding.
Yeah, I thought Beyonce was the big letdown. She was terrible.
I totally agree.
Terrible.
There was something very artificial.
Yes.
Like it just she wasn't
she has a
feeling
hard
it.
time even acting. Yes.
I like doing Dreamgirls, but
the reason to see this movie has nothing to do with the plot. It's
the visuals.
Very simple. It's terrific, gorgeous visuals. The humans look cool. The plant life looks fantastic.
Those
birds,
the pussy willows,
pussy willows, and
the things fly off the top of her head. It's great.
And the bad guys are kind of a combination of frogs and bats and everything.
Orcs. And there was a lot of Lord of the Rings in there.
Kind of that's true. This reminded me of a movie a few years ago called Ferngully, years and years ago.
90s, early 90s. Well, Avatar had that same
there's an Avatar spirit to it, and yet it's not a heavily pro-environmental message. No, it's not heavy-handed.
Not like the Lorax. Like it definitely keeps it. It's there, but it doesn't pretend to be something that it's not. Like the Lorax.
It's just not
did.
groundbreaking like the Pixar films. It doesn't have a standalone plot. Like if you go through all the Pixar movies, they are completely out of the box.
Yeah.
In terms of their
most of them,
and they tend to work on adult emotions as well as child emotions.
Yeah.
And this film does not get there. I wouldn't say.
No, no. I thought the first 40 minutes of this movie was really strong. Yeah. I was into it. I thought the whole thing with the father-daughter, I found that relatable, and I felt bad for her. And even the stuff when we first are introduced to this whole other civilization, it is very awe-inspiring.
It is.
But then a good 45 minutes in, once the visual panache is there, something happened. The story, for me, it lost its emotional. I lost an emotional connection.
And it was like
it's when Steven Tyler showed up as that caterpillar, the movie really started to lose me a little bit.
And he was terrific. He's got a great voice, boy.
He does, but
he starts to sing a song, and they should have let him sing that song.
But it was bizarre. I'm like, do we really need a musical number? I didn't like that.
They could have used it. I mean, if it was really a
they better do it for the rest of the movie.
But I'm saying if it was really a knockout song. They've done that in Ice Age films.
I know.
The pirate one had this great big musical in it. Remember, in the second one had those birds, kind of that Berkeley
I love
musical.
That was funny.
So I thought they were going to go into that, and it's like, no, they didn't. It was weird.
It sort of introduced it, and it ditched it. You know what other movie it kind of reminded me of? A really great 80s gem from Joe Johnston, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes, it did.
It definitely had that element with him being, like you mentioned, the absent-minded professor, which is a great analogy. But the way he's got that helmet and he's out in the forest, like looking around, and it definitely had that kind of a feel. There are really cute characters. I love the three-legged dog. You know, if all else fails, go to the dog.
If I was to compare it to a Pixar film, it would be maybe A Bug's Life. Even the birds in this film kind of reminded me, if you think about the Bug's Life. But see, Bug's Life had its own, it created very successfully its own world and its own very beloved characters. So it's a notch below Pixar, but it's certainly not a bad movie.
Well, I enjoyed it, even though I had issues, especially in the second half. As a whole, I enjoyed it more than The Croods. And I know when we reviewed The Croods earlier this year on the show, you hadn't seen it yet, and you since have seen it. I just wish it would have sustained that sense of wonder and that emotional connection.
It's hard to
Even Christoph Waltz, I love his voice. He's got a great voice. But there wasn't really a lot of explanation. I know what he was doing, but it really was just good versus evil. I guess I wanted a little more. Something happens to one of the characters in his little group that sort of sets his drive into motion. Yeah. But, I thought it was a decent movie. Yes. I definitely hoped
had a great little father-daughter subtext, which I always love.
Yeah, I mean, that was all. That was cute, and it was gentle, and I don't know where the movie ends up.
You could do worse as a parent. It's not one of those films where you take your kids and you just go through the whole movie.
No,
it's delightful.
There's some great laughs,
and the animation is terrific.
Oh, it's definitely gorgeous. Yeah, Technically, it's superb.
The comic relief is supplied by two buddies. One is a snail, and one is a slug.
They're they're the sort of the minions.
Yes,
the Despicable Me minions of the piece.
And that's a good example. Despicable Me, and of course its sequel is coming out, really is genre bending. It set a new level. The humor there, the characters and everything. So it doesn't quite even get to a level of Despicable Me.
No,
quality.
and the trailers for this movie really sort of, for the most part, pegged it as kind of a serious type thing, and there is a seriousness to it.
It is an action adventure. It's not meant to be a comedy.
No, but it does have a lot of humor and light play going on, particularly with the snails and, as I mentioned,
I don't
the dog.
think you ever
so
saw
forth.
The Borrowers.
No, I was going to mention The Borrowers also. And there have been
That's
other...
much more quiet film. It's not like
well,
this,
there was a live action. Well, are you talking about The Borrowers with John Goodman?
No, I'm sorry.
The Secret Life of the World of the Arrietty.
Arrietty.
Right,
I'm sorry, based on The Borrowers.
But there's a film called The Borrowers.
Yeah, no, but I was thinking of The Secret Life of Arrietty, which they're all in miniature, right?
Right. And
that's
again,
just one of those anime films by the Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Hi, you say Miyazaki, I say Hayazaki.
Yeah, he did Ponyo and Spirited Away.
And it's just one of those more thought-provoking films.
Yeah.
Not really an action films per
Well,
se.
did you see the film from the 90s with
The
John
Borrowers?
Goodman? It's actually a live action film.
I can't even remember it.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah.
You remember that movie, The Witches?
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of along those lines, and I kind of enjoyed it.
There's not a ton of big animated releases during the summer. So I just tell parents, if you want your kids' school is out, take them to go see this film. It's a wonderful film. It's not at the Pixar level.
I think they should take
the visual is
I think
beautiful.
they should take them to see Hangover 3. It's much more educational.
Well, let's find out. Let's talk
I'm
about
kidding, parents out there.
Let's move on.
One final moment that we didn't mention about
I didn't
Epic
wanna spoil anything.
that I enjoyed, the slow-mo thing.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, and a fly would buzz around my face and I'd try and catch it. I always thought, I wonder what I look like to a fly. I'd always wondered that, and this movie sort of shows you that, and it's funny.
It is funny.
I did like that. I thought that was a cool concept. So I think you liked Epic a little more than I did. I didn't find it terrible. It wasn't great. It was decent.
Beautiful animation.
Yes. So moving on to a non-family friendly fare, Hangover 3.
Yes.
Are you a fan of the franchise?
Okay. One was so hyped. I went in kind of expecting, I saw it on cable, and I had to admit that I laughed quite a bit in Hangover 1. Then I heard Hangover 2 was so terrible and just a regurgitation of the first one.
Yeah,
that I avoided it completely.
it was a reboot set in a new location.
If I'm going to see something disgusting and vile, it better be really entertaining. And
well, the Farrellys do that very well.
Yeah.
There's something about Mary.
they're uneven, but yes.
Well, I think they've hit more than miss.
Yeah.
For me personally.
Right.
So Hangover 3, very interesting. I don't think we need to set up what the first film was about, but the third movie, Todd Phillips, I think he and his crew, director Todd Phillips, they listened to their detractors. A big gripe people have with the second movie is, it's just the same movie. It's the same as the first, just in a different setting. So I think they set out to throw that out the window.
But that's interesting, you know why? Because we just got done
If it
with a
ain't broke,
lengthy
don't fix it.
review of Fast and Furious.
Right.
And there are very subtle plot changes movie to movie
Right.
to movie. So in their minds, they're giving their audience exactly what they want. They want that same brotherhood. The plot is secondary, but they're giving them great action. So why doesn't that apply to Hangover?
Because I think when you're dealing with humor, the beats and rhythm of an action sequence can be different. I think that's the difference. I think we're talking about humor, and they're going to the same well twice. It's the same reason I think that a lot of hardcore Star Trek fans were bothered with some of that. You know, we didn't have a chance to talk about that. You recently revisited Wrath of Khan, but I had mentioned to you that there's a sequence in Star Trek Into the Darkness that has the same beats, the same rhythm.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like not a cop out, but they're going. It's a fake sort of emotion because they're pulling something from that other movie.
Like I said, there's a fine line between
plagiarism and homage.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
That's my whole point.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's the big difference. So Hangover 3, I think Todd Phillips said, you know what? People were irked by that. This is going to be the last movie. Let's do something a little different. So I'll give them props for doing something different. But the problem is the humor. This is a comedy, and I don't think that the humor level is anywhere near the same realm as the first movie. Now, the first movie, for me, I actually thought was somewhat overrated. I liked the movie.
Right.
I'd much rather revisit the movie that inspired it, which is Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks. In my opinion, that was a huge inspiration for Hangover.
I think, though, around the same year was Bridesmaids, or maybe that came out.
No,
the next
Bridesmaids
year.
came out a couple of years
And
later.
that to me had a whole nother standard for an R-rated film. There was real depth, characters we really cared about.
Yeah, sure.
and great humor.
And the thing about The Hangover, I watched that movie and I'm like, do I really like these people? Aside from maybe Ed Helms, no, they're not like. Even Bradley Cooper's a jerk.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that he's found this new thing with Silver Linings Playbook and some of these other movies. He did the same thing in Wedding Crashers, where he played sort of the creep villain guy.
I felt like that movie was overrated too.
Yeah, I mean,
it is so predictable and just.
So I think Todd Phillips, he wanted to take two of the elements that people talked about most in the first movie and amp up their characters.
So we're back to Las Vegas?
I'll get to that in just a sec. The two characters that most people talk about in the first movie are Zach Galifianakis' Alan. He's sort of like the childlike simpleton, oafish guy in that first movie. The other is Ken Jeong, the Asian actor who we've seen in Role Models. He's on is it one of those not Community, is it Parks and Recreation?
Parks and Recreation, maybe. Yeah.
One of those shows.
Right.
He's fabulous. So Phillips is like, let's make these guys the center, the focal point of this movie. So as the film opens, basically Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, tragedy strikes, and his friends, they refer to them as the Wolf Pack. I've never quite understood that whole moniker. They call Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, and Zach Galifianakis, they call them the Wolf Pack. And I don't think that they're...
Maybe they all went to North Carolina State.
I don't think they're important enough to warrant some sort of a moniker like that. It's not like the Rat Pack or the Brat Pack. Hey, let's call them the Wolf Pack because it's three dudes in Vegas, Yeah, I know. I get it. They did make that gag. I just never. But in the second and third movie, they tried to make it a bigger deal than it is. I've always that's my opinion on the matter. But anyway, they have an intervention. Alan is he's got a lot of self-destructive behavior going on, so they want to take care of him, and they're going to take him to some facility out in the middle of nowhere, and then crazy things happen. So it should be noted that they don't even get to Vegas until like the third act of this movie. It takes place in different locations in Mexico, all these different locations. And then once they get to Vegas, all hell breaks loose, as usual.
People are calling it a kind of more of an angry, dark thriller than a comedy.
Well, it's strange. I almost would like to see what a thriller would be in Todd Phillips's hands, because there are moments in this movie that the tones are conflicting. It was really a hard movie to figure out. And after it was over and reflecting on it, the one thing that kept hitting me was, well, this is marketed as a comedy. Everyone's expecting a comedy. It's The Hangover. And they... once again, as they prove with the second one, sometimes you can't capture that lightning in a bottle.
No.
There was something about the first movie. There was a chemistry, sort of this kinetic sort of drive going on.
Adam, we're going to be talking about this when we talk about sequels.
Yeah.
Especially for comedies, it's almost
tough.
impossible.
So, they do in the final act, they go back and make connections to the first movie. There's some stuff with Zach Galifianakis, thank you, that is sweet, although unearned. There's a funny bit. Melissa McCarthy has a little bit part in the movie, and there's a little cute thing between the two of them. They revisit, you remember the baby that he had strapped to his chest in the first movie? They revisit that character, only the kid is like 4 years old now, and Zach Galifianakis has a moment with him. And, there are a couple of funny moments there. There's a twist in the movie that I have to admit I didn't...
Don't reveal it.
I won't. Okay. That I didn't see coming. And the big thing that was hitting me in the head the whole time I'm watching it is, why the hell is this called The Hangover 3? They don't get wasted. There is no moment where that happens. And then everyone stick around if you do go watch the end credits, because they do something during the end credits that sort of winks.
So overall, a disappointment. Better than two,
I wouldn't even call it a disappointment, because my expectations...
Two, not as good as one.
It was better than two just because it was willing to try something different. It did have moments. It does not have the consistent laughs. A lot of the Bradley Cooper and Ed Helms almost feel like they're on cruise control. It does a lot of the time feel like a cash grab, which is what a lot of sequels are. Let's face it. How often do we see a sequel where it's like they really wanted to further the story of these characters? That none of them got big paydays for the first movie. It was a fluke. Todd Phillips I heard gave back some of his pay to finish the film, and then it ended up becoming a huge success. Boom, they were on the second one like so quick, and they got a bigger payday for the second and third. I don't want to say that that's the only reason they did it. There are certainly moments, but overall, weak sauce.
You're listening to Film Fanatics 95.3 KTIM Radio. And we're going to take a little bit of break.
Well, let's do one other before we go to break.
We're going to do one more before we go to break. I have one more movie we're going to talk about.
Robert Redford
and if you want to
movie.
call in and argue with Bruce Bennett or Adam Mast, you can call us at 435-275-9717. 275-9717. Bob's standing by, waiting for all those phone calls, and I'm sure the board will get lighted up today.
By the way, Ken Jeong in Hangover 3 commits 100%. That guy is hilarious.
Yeah, I
really,
have found
really
him
funny.
very funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. And role models, loved him. But the thing is, 1 minute he's
He needs
likable,
good
the
material.
next minute he's mean. Like, it was so flip-floppy that it was hard to finger point.
weird.
But anyway,
Okay,
disappointing.
now,
So what are you
now
going
for
to talk about?
a completely different movie
Oh, yes.
called The Company You Keep. And this is flying. This film is flying well below the radars on the three films we've talked
Especially
about so
for the
far.
people involved.
Let me just say, first of all, this is a film directed and starring Robert Redford, and he is not even the best actor in this film by a long shot. The ensemble, we were wondering, does when Robert Redford call you to say, I'm making a movie, you go, yes. Susan Sarandon, Chris Cooper, Stanley Tucci, Brendan Gleeson, Sam Elliott, Terrence Howard, Nick
LaBeouf.
Nolte, and then Shia LaBeouf and Julie Christie. Anyway, the basic plot is fairly simple. It's an investigative journalism story and an action, kind of a thriller. Robert Redford plays a guy of a former member of a revolutionary militant group called the Weather Underground, the Weathermen, which is based on some true stories. There's actual footage from that period of the late 60s, who were protesting the Vietnam War. And then when Susan Sarandon, after all these years, you may have remember this in the headlines, she decides to turn herself in. She led a completely hidden identity, had a new identity, and lived a completely different life as a housewife, I think in Vermont in this film, and she turns herself in, and that sets the stage for kind of a domino effect where she turns herself in, and then all the other members of the group are like, why are you doing this? And then there's now some pressure on them to reveal themselves. So Robert Redford is in the center of this, and then Shia LaBeouf, he plays the journalist for the small newspaper in New York, and he is going to get to the bottom of this. And this is what I love about these kinds of films, that it's almost like a lost art, Adam, the art of investigative journalism, where you hunt down every lead, where you ask tough questions, where you're just completely obsessed with finding the truth. You know, and Shia LaBeouf is this hangdog journalist. He wears a big coat, they ruffle his hair, and he has ugly glasses on. It's great because they really dress him down. He's a cute kid, you know, and I love that about this film. It reminds me of a film a few years ago called State of Play. I
like that movie.
Yeah, and I think this is much better in my opinion.
Wow.
Especially when they just keep throwing these big actors walk up and you go, Richard Jenkins has this little tiny part, and you go, he nails it. Everything these characters do is interesting because they are so good. Not that their ego, you know, not that their character or their off-screen life is bigger, just they're dang good actors.
Yeah.
It reminds me of films that were made in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's all about the plot,
Like
and
All
the
the President's
performances.
Men and stuff like that.
And of course, like Robert Redford's other films of the last 10, 15 years, it's a film of ideas where he's talking about what's right and wrong, what's truth, whether these protesters made the right moral choices in reflecting back and so on. And there's a lot of discussion about that. A lot of kids under 30 might not get that. They might want to see more action and more thrills.
Yeah, because this movie is taking a beating. People are not responding critically or fan.
Well, I mean, it's gotten 55%, but only like 10 reviewers have reviewed it.
Did you see The Conspirator? His last film?
I did. The Civil War film.
And I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting history lesson. It didn't hit. I think, as
that was
hard
a
as
period
Lincoln.
drama. That was totally different. This
Yeah.
is modern day.
Well, Lions for Lambs. Remember that?
Yeah, and this is not like that. This is a more traditional plot. Lions for Lambs was kind of two movies. I liked it. I rather liked it.
Yeah.
But that was a discussion of political issues,
Right.
which
This
I
is-
actually liked.
Right.
But this film is more of a investigative journalistic thriller.
Okay.
It's not frenetic. It's not high energy.
Yeah.
It's a thought-provoking film, but it's really, really well written. I really like it.
So you're recommending it? It was at Main Street Cinema. I hope they've
It still
kept
is.
it.
It still
still
is.
there?
It's nothing like anything else that's in film. But
Okay.
I like those kind of films. I like to be surprised in a film. I like a film that makes me think. And this film definitely does. And I thought Shia LaBeouf made a real turning point film with Lawless. His performance in Lawless.
Absolutely.
This continues this. He's really good in this.
Well, he said, look, I'm done with, Crystal Skull and Transformers. I really want to take charge of my career. I want to do, it's kind of what Matthew McConaughey has been doing lately, where I think he that ship has sailed. He really wants to focus.
There's
on
also
work,
a father-daughter subtext in this movie too, which I'm drawn to, and it's very, very touching. Warning to everybody: most of the actors in this look older than you remember, and it's kind of tough for those of us who grew up idolizing Robert Redford, Julie Christie, Nick Nolte. Poor Nick Nolte. He looks like he fell out of Hangover Part 3, okay?
Oh, no. Remember the mugshot when he was doing the Hulk?
They almost made him up to look like that in this
funny.
film. But he is good. He's solid.
So
that's one thing about everybody. They can take all of this dialogue. Chris Cooper
Cooper's always
is
great.
A small role. That's what I'm saying.
So for viewers out there that want a little something more upstairs, something adult, amongst all this crazy
the paper
summer
had
bombast.
it rated PG-13, so I was a little surprised that it has some F words in it. Maybe not a ton, maybe 8 or 10 F words.
Wow, that's quite a few for a PG-13.
Well, no, I said I thought it was PG-13.
Oh, is it
and
R?
then when we looked it up on the web,
R.
It is indeed
So you
R.
hear that, everyone? It's actually rated R.
Yeah, it's rated R.
Okay,
but it's a few F words. That's it.
Okay. Well, before we go to break, I did want to mention one other film that's not on the docket here that I just wanted to give a brief mention of, and it's not playing here yet, but you'll be hearing about it. It's Before Midnight, which is the third.
Same thing with Mud, which I can't wait to see.
Mud is phenomenal. Yeah, that's another film.
Matthew
And
McConaughey.
once these movies come here, we know we have listeners that are in other areas that have these movies. I highly want to recommend.
We can appreciate a film like Fast and Furious. We love going to the movie theater and then just watching mindless action when it's well executed, right? Once in a while you want to sit down and see a movie that's well constructed, well written, has good
like the
actors in
Redford
it.
movie you said.
I love these films.
I was lucky enough to see Before Midnight and Mud both at Sundance earlier this year, and there were two of my favorite movies there. So if you guys live in an area that are showing these movies, please go. Bruce and I will be talking about those movies more on a future show once Bruce had an opportunity to see them. They're both phenomenal
a film
movies.
like The Company You Keep, it's not showy.
Yeah.
It's not going to have these bravura performances where somebody, a well-known actor, shoots up or gets a prosthetic nose or all these other things that cause Oscar attention.
Right.
It's just a great, solid little movie.
Okay. Well, you're listening to Film Fanatics. You can stream us live at ktim.org. Actually, you can't, but you can listen to us at ktim.org or here at 95.3 FM. We are going to take a break. When we come back, feel free to call us. The number here is 435-275-9717. We are going to have a really fun topic discussion when we come back, so everyone hang tight. Don't go anywhere.
KTIM computer support provided by Lifeguard Computers, a local computer store and repair center. 946 West Sunset Boulevard, next to Play It Again Sports. Competitive pricing, fast turnaround, and courteous customer service. For more information, you can call 215-4244. Lifeguard Computers. A DUI costs an average person $10,000. Any injuries? Double that. The average cost for a taxi? Under $20. Seems like an easy decision. This message brought to you by Ready Cab. 467 Taxi.
George's Cafe and Pub in historic Ancestor Square at the heart of downtown St. George. A relaxed atmosphere, live music and food. Now open for breakfast, lunch and dinner. You can check out their webpage at www.georgescorner.com for reservations, specials and details. George's Corner Restaurant, St. George Boulevard and Main Street, Ancestor Square. That's downtown St. George where arts and history flourish. KTIM is a supporter of local businesses and our community. George's Corner Restaurant, a proud supporter of the Peter Gunn Show.
Hi, this is Bob Patterson, inviting you to come join us at Rosalind's Cafe every weekday morning from 7 to 11. Now, I wouldn't advise eating the food, but the music is great. The music we grew up with, the great hits from the 60s and 70s. Weekday mornings, 7 to 11, Rosalind's Cafe is the place to be, right here on KTIM 95.3. I'll save you the booth in the corner, all right?
Welcome back to Film Fanatics. My name's Adam Mast. I write for The Independent here in Southern Utah, as well as ZBowman.com. Sitting across from me, the handsome, effervescent Bruce Bennett.
Effervescent. I like that.
Of madaboutmovies.org.
Not sure what it is, but I like it.
And The Spectrum. So at the top of the show, we talked about Fast and the Furious 6, and we talked about Hangover 3, which is going to the great segue into our...
Fast and Furious, yes. Hangover 3, no.
Right.
Epic, yes.
Half,
maybe.
And you really like the
And
Redford
Company
film.
You Keep, definitely. Yes.
So let's talk about, in honor of the Fast and the Furious, let's talk about great cinematic car chases. And we can do a top 3, but we can mention a few others too. So do you want to start this conversation, or shall I?
We're going to just name our favorite 5, let's say.
I put 3, but we can do 5 if you want.
Okay, no, that's fine. We never talk about the criteria we use.
Right.
But for me, I like a car chase that feels real.
Yeah.
If I know CGI is used, or if I know some dude's jumping from one fast-moving vehicle to the next in full speed, and I know it's completely preposterous, even though I may laugh at it in the theater, I don't necessarily would put it in my list because I know it's been altered in some way. And of course, all car chases are altered in some way. You can't actually drive 80 miles an hour and hit another car multiple times and not something bad happen immediately. But
my criteria is different. I say if it's badass, it's going in the list.
Okay.
It's that simple.
And I respect that.
There's special effects tampering with everything these days.
But when you hear my list, you'll see why.
Okay, fair enough.
Even though it's just the idea of realism, I put a mark on realism.
All right, let's hear it.
Number 5, 1971's French Connection.
Oh, yeah.
Which, to me, set the stage, might be the best car chase up to that point in time. It almost defined car chases because Gone in 60 Seconds, Bullet came after that, and I love those. But French Connection with Popeye Doyle, played by Gene Hackman, and he's going underground trying to catch a subway train and going through this traffic, I think New York or Chicago, and it's amazing. Another one that a lot of people wouldn't say a car chase maybe, but it's a race, and it's called Against All Odds. And this is where Jeff Bridges is in a Porsche 911, James Woods in a Ferrari, and they're driving along Sunset Boulevard, a street that I used to drive on all the time. Amazing how they filmed that they're side by side going apparently 70, 80 miles an hour. Really, really well shot car sequence.
Definitely.
Third one is a little more modern, Bourne Identity. The first Bourne Identity, this is where they had the Mini Coopers going through Paris. Again, How did they film that in the crowded confines of Paris? Really, really well done. And I liked it because they're the underdog. They have the smallest, slowest vehicle, and so his ability to escape everybody is based on his driving skill. Really liked it. I can still watch it multiple times, and that's one of my criteria is, do I like to just separate out that car chase or that car sequence from the rest of the film? I don't care. I can sit down and watch that endlessly. The next one might surprise you a little bit, Terminator 2, the second Terminator.
Yeah, definitely.
Where the Terminator and John Connor are being chased by a truck.
Right.
And they're on a motorcycle.
Down in the little, not like
aqueduct.
a sewage ravine, aqueduct.
The LA aqueduct.
Oh,
and they
excellent.
come up and out of it and everything like that, and there's some cool things that happen.
And he's flipping the shotgun out, shooting
awesome.
the chains off the
and
fence.
Fire, and it's just
everyone loves
great
Terminator 2.
chase scene.
Love it. Great choice.
And it doesn't even involve a car. It's a truck and a motorcycle.
Okay,
and then my
one.
number one, this one's going to shock you because it was made in the last 5 years. I think it's the best car sequence ever filmed. Death Proof 2007.
That's on my list.
Do you remember this one?
Oh, of course.
It starts out with kind of a prank, right? one of the girls, the lead girls, I forget her name, Zoe Bell, I think is her name, the actress, and she straps herself to the hood of, I think it's a Dodge Challenger.
She's an Australian stunt woman by trade, the gal that played the role.
She straps herself, Bob, to the top of a Dodge Challenger, and with her two girlfriends driving the car, Rosario Dawson, I think, is driving. No, she's in the back seat. Anyway, they're driving down this highway. And all of a sudden, Kurt Russell in a Dodge Charger pulls up and he goes, "I'm going to mess with these girls." So he starts banging her in the car, and she is flying all over the hood of this car.
And the car's going 75, 80 miles an hour.
And one strap comes out, so now she's got only one arm. So with the other arm, she's trying to grab the car, and he's banging her, and then they're turning, and then the other strap comes off. I do not know how they filmed this without killing people.
Okay. It's true.
Unbelievable.
It's breathtaking.
It's about 12 minutes long. It is breathtaking. I still go, oh, when I watch it, and I have to give Quentin Tarantino props. The rest of the movie stunk. This movie, I disagree. Sequence,
I enjoyed it.
Great.
It's a slasher movie, only it's a guy killing women with his car instead of a machete. That's all. That's all that it is.
It has a revenge twist to it.
That's really fun. Okay, I'll give you my list. And number 5 on my list is Death Proof. And the thing that makes it so spectacular is Tarantino actually went out and shot this stuff. This is high speed stuff. When you watch this film, this is not.
There's no CGI.
Sped up. It's not sped up. This is actual stunt people doing this crazy stuff. Love it. I actually like
the risk factor alone.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I disagree. I really enjoyed the movie as a whole, But what's next on my list? Road Warrior.
Oh, yes.
The Road Warrior from 1982.
First one or?
No, the second. The first one's Mad Max. And actually Mad Max
Beyond. The sequence when they escape with the gas truck?
At the end when the shotgun shell is out on the hood of the car and he sends that little kid out to grab it, and it's got Vernon Wells, the scary Mohawk guy. Yeah, actually Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome also has a pretty spectacular car chase at the end. So that's my number 4. Number 3 on my list is French Connection, and you already mentioned that on your list, so we don't need to go into the plot, but it's really spectacular. My 2 and 1, I'm just shocked that you didn't give either of these movies love. And my second choice is one that people don't look at really because it's more of a comedy, but it's still spectacular, and that's Blues Brothers, which has one of the greatest car chases ever committed to film. It's got must be 100 squad cars that are sent flying upside down. Takes place in Chicago. The whole final act of the movie is like a 22-minute extended car chase, and it's John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd are hilarious, but the actual chase itself is spectacular.
About that one.
Number 1, I'm stunned. Maybe you didn't consider
it's on my list. I'm sure.
Do you know what my number 1 is?
No, I don't.
Well, it involves a truck and a couple of Jeeps and motorcycles, but how could you go through your list without including Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, to me, contains the single greatest chase sequence ever committed to the film.
It escaped me. You know why?
I don't think people consider it a car chase per se.
Yes, because the movie overall was so good.
Yeah,
it's different. All of these car chasing sequences stick out. Yeah. And that film was so good. It's just, another Spielberg great action moment.
Yeah, and I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. And just throwing out a couple...
And let's be honest, it is a car chase, but the key element is Indiana Jones.
Right.
It's more of an escape moment as anything else because goes under the truck
and I guess for me
out of the other driver. And
you were talking about real though, and that's why I like this. I mean, it is fantasy and it's action adventure, but it's a part of something that is so great it just makes it even better.
Well,
you know
I would say this about that particular sequence probably inspired more sequences after it than almost any sequence in history.
I agree. And some honorable mentions, just stuff that we didn't mention. The Fast and the Furious movies have some pretty spectacular stuff.
They have good stuff. But again, they're kind of preposterous.
Ronin with Robert De Niro, the John Frankenheimer film. Right. A couple of of other films that we didn't mention, Vanishing Point, which came out in 1972, which had some pretty amazing stuff. Bullet, which you mentioned when you were talking about French Connection.
Steve McQueen.
And a William Friedkin movie called To Live and Die in L.A.
Yes.
With William Peterson is chasing Willem Dafoe on the freeway, and they're going against traffic on the freeway. It's insane. So anyway, a lot of great car chases out there to choose from, and all these movies we mentioned are pretty great. Now, moving on, we talked about Hangover 3, and we're always talking about how sequels are generally not as good as the first. You could count on a couple of hands. I mean, with movies in general, you go to movies like Godfather 2 and Empire Strikes Back,
Superman
and
2.
Superman. There are obvious Spider-Man 2. There are obvious ones out there. With comedies, though, it's the kiss of death. There are very seldom comedy sequels that come anywhere near.
And yet, the sequels often make more than
They
their
do.
first movie because there's such pent-up demand because of the love of the first one.
Exactly.
We're such suckers.
It's tough, though. So we wanted to throw together a little list of worthy comedy sequels. So I'm going to throw it over to you.
First of all, my definition of a sequel is not necessarily just the second installment, right?
No, it can be any.
A sequel of a sequel is still a
In
sequel.
fact, you want to let me start, and then
Yeah,
you can
I'll let
follow
you
my
start,
lead?
but I just
Okay.
want to first of all say that all the Muppet movies are great.
Right, and there are 5 baby geniuses. So if you wanted to pick part
you
4,
can have every one
that's
of them.
fine.
I'm just saying all the Muppet movies are not necessarily sequels of each other,
I
but they
agree.
bring back the same
I
cast.
think-
So I just want to say the reason they're not in my list is because all of them are
So you
great
did-
and they're not really a sequel.
Well, and other things, there are other things. I mean, a lot of people consider the Back to the Future series comedy, and I didn't include those either because I think Back to the
agree.
Future 2 is a terrific movie.
It would have been in there if you would consider that a comedy. but I would
or
consider
another
it action.
film, the Kevin Smith movies. A lot of
Clerks.
characters float in and out, and I think arguably the best movie of Kevin Smith's career is Chasing Amy, but I didn't really consider it a sequel. It has characters that float throughout,
Well,
but they're not really
Same thing with
sequels.
Step Brothers and Talladega Nights. Same 2 guys playing almost the same guys.
No.
But
the Clerks featured
the
Chasing
same
Amy,
names.
same characters.
They're brought back.
They're the same
Yeah,
characters.
there's been a few movies like that where they're
Right.
the same guys.
So anyway, keeping all of that stuff in mind, even Evil Dead 2, it's a
Okay, that was on my list.
Is it? Well,
I consider it a comedy.
Well, it's a tough one because the first Evil Dead movie is a straight up horror film.
But it doesn't
it's not,
matter.
It's
Evil
not
Dead
funny.
2 was meant as a sequel.
Yeah, but it's not. I guess it's a funny sequel, but it's not
Still a
part
sequel.
of. It's not part of a.
It's on my list.
It's not
Staying.
a comedy friend. I'll let you stay.
One of
Evil
the greatest
Dead 2
sequel of all time.
It is.
It has
Evil
the
Dead
number
2
in the name of the title.
It does.
So.
Evil Dead 2 is still my favorite Sam Raimi movie. I'm just saying people recognize the Evil Dead series as a horror franchise. They don't look at it as a comedy series.
I would say most people watching Evil Dead 2, you have to consider it because it's not that scary.
No, but it
It's
was
hilarious.
unrated because of the gore factor.
Yes.
That's why it was not rated. They
It's
released
a
it
gory
unrated.
comedy, but it's still a
Well,
comedy.
I'm not going to argue with you. I love Evil Dead 2. So
Okay,
you
how
want
many
to put on
people
your
here
list.
think Evil Dead 2 is a comedy?
I've never seen it.
Oh, Bob,
Okay.
go watch it.
All right.
Okay.
So here's my list.
Go.
Okay. And I'm just going to do top 3. Okay.
That's fine.
Third greatest comedy
There's
of all
probably only
time.
3.
Yeah, probably. Third one I almost forgot, and it ended up being my number
I'll
1.
bet all of yours are on my list.
Well, let's see. My number 3 pick is Addams Family Values from
I
Barry
did not.
Sonnenfeld, which is,
not have that.
in my opinion, the first one's good. I think the second one is infinitely better. A lot of that has to do with the
Interesting.
inclusion of Joan Cusack in the cast,
I don't
who
even
has a
think I
love
saw
affair
it,
with
Adam.
Christopher Lloyd. Hilarious.
Because I didn't like the first one that much.
Yeah, no, the second one's infinitely better.
Okay,
Trust
got
me.
it.
Check
All
it
right,
out.
good.
Number 2 on my list, and this is interesting because I love this movie for the exact same reasons I hated Hangover 2. It's essentially a redo of the first movie, but the charm and the humor level, I loved it. And it's Crocodile Dundee 2. I really, really enjoyed it. It's
interesting.
the same plot beats, fish out of water story, but Paul Hogan nailed it. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, number one.
Number 1 greatest comedy sequel of all time.
It's got to be
You
my
want to take a
number one.
guess?
Christmas Vacation.
Christmas Vacation.
Yes!
And I almost forgot. I almost forgot about this movie.
I think technically European Vacation came out after the first.
It did. Yeah, it
first
was
one.
the
But this is
Vacation.
a sequel of a sequel.
Yeah, Vacation, European Vacation, Christmas
can't
Vacation,
even-
and Vegas Vacation.
And you know what? The first National Lampoon's Vacation
Hilarious.
was fantastic. But
Absolutely
this film has
fantastic.
actually maybe a greater lore to it.
It really does. What I
Every
call
time
Christmas
I put up
Vacation.
Christmas lights, I think of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd call it a better movie, but it is every bit as good, and I love it. And like you, I revisit that movie every
was
Christmas.
number 1 on my list.
Can I mention just some?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you do your list before I talk about other
Well,
stuff.
you stole kind of my thunder. Evil Dead was on there. Pig Panther, The Shot in the Dark.
Shot in the Dark is an honorable
I
mention.
absolutely love. And there's some other
Outstanding.
films that I like Big Top Pee Wee, Lethal Weapon 2.
You
was
like Big
good.
Top Pee Wee?
I did.
but
Rush
that
Hour
more.
2.
But wait, but more than
No, more. Not
and
more.
Rush Hour 2 is awful.
This is why they're not on my list.
Rush Hour 2
City
is
Slickers
awful.
2 I thought had moments.
Ugh.
Naked Gun 2.5 I thought was
Great.
okay. All
Hot
right.
Shots Part 2.
Ace
Better.
Ventura, people hated. Pet Detective, I thought it was really
The second one?
The second one,
Terrible.
yes. No, great.
Where he craps
Okay.
out, where he comes out of the
But
rhino's butt.
my number 1 comedy sequel, and it's 2 movies: Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3.
See,
best sequels ever made. I consider them comedies.
Okay, I'll grant you that, and it was on my honorable mention. I just don't think people look at those as comedies. I do agree with you, though. You kind of do have to. They are
not just
funny.
kids movies either, though.
No, I agree, and I'm not going to argue that. I think those are absolutely great choices. Let me throw out some other ones, and you just say yay or nay. Wayne's World 2.
It was better than the first one.
I liked it.
Is that the one that has Madonna in it? I can't remember.
No,
that was the first.
Kim
one.
Basinger.
Yeah, Asia Carrera. Is she in the
She's Tia Carrera. She's in both.
Asia Carrera's
in the first who was the villain?
Why am I throwing out those names?
The villain in the second one was
Tia Carrera.
Tia Carrera. The second one had Ballroom
my
Blitz.
mom's not listening.
The second movie had who was the villain? Christopher Walken.
Oh yeah.
Remember he chases them into the gay bar
merged.
and they're dressed as the
like
village
the Austin
people.
Powers movies, they kind of merged.
Yeah, Awesome Powers.
Spy Who Shagged Me, I think was okay.
Yeah, Spy Who Shagged Me. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, I think, is a lot.
Was
of fun.
good. I think I saw the first
it.
one.
Great Muppet Caper.
I know I saw the first
Great
one.
Muppet Caper.
Like I said, all the Muppet movies.
Really Back to the Future 2. Fletch Lives. Hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
Don't remember.
Excellent movie. Very, very funny. Chasing Amy, of course. And I'm hoping that a negative trend is broken this December when we get Anchorman 2. I can only hope and pray that the magic is recaptured because I have a lot of
It has been a long
hopes for that
time, so
movie.
that's good. That bodes well. That means they took their time.
So fun topic.
Yeah, it's a fun topic. I think overwhelmingly, I would say 98% of all comedy sequels tank, and they're no good.
Well, another one we
used
didn't
the term,
mention.
I think lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And that's
with comedy, it's tough.
With comedy, you're establishing characters for the first time.
Yeah.
And to revisit that's what's interesting about humor. It's so hard to revisit.
Polarizing.
The same time of humor.
What about Beverly Hills Cop 2?
It's
not. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people hate it.
I don't remember hating it. I remember going,
it's not as good,
but it's not the first.
No,
film.
it definitely amps up the action. I feel
Eddie
like
Murphy is never better.
No, well, I actually think you know who directed the second one? This is interesting. You may not know this.
Yes, I do. Zemeckis?
Tony Scott.
Tony Scott. Interesting.
And the second movie actually
right.
felt more like an action movie than a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It amped up the action, and I liked it. It wasn't perfect, but they brought all the
Might be one to
main
revisit.
characters back.
Yeah.
So moving on, we only have a few minutes left here. I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry, I'm bummed we didn't talk about this last week. I forgot about it. Sunset in the Square. The movie's in the park.
Right.
Have you seen their lineup this year?
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Last night, Tanya and I took the kids and watched Napoleon Dynamite in the park, and it was awesome.
Your kids get that movie? I think it's funny.
Matthew laughed. I don't think it's really for kids. The humor's too dry. It goes over the kids' heads.
It's not a punchline movie either.
June 14th. Again, it's right here by the library downtown. You go take your blankets out there. It's free. Chairs, blankets. They got food vendors. The minute nightfall hits, they show a movie on this great big inflatable screen. The sound's great, and it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
June 14th, they're showing Life of Pi. June 28th is Night at the Museum 2. July 12th is Ice Age Continental Drift. July 26th is Nightmare Before Christmas.
Wow.
August 9th is Hook, and then they close it out on August 23rd with an 80s movie we all love, The Princess Bride.
That's kind of a great eclectic selection. So
Yeah.
kudos to the city for
doing
doing
that.
some different types of movies.
So take your families out. It's a lot of fun.
And is
Again,
it
it's
free?
free. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
Do they
free.
have popcorn or
Oh
drinks
yeah,
that
they
you
have
go
vendor stations. They have pizza out there, popcorn,
And you
snow
can probably
cones.
find the full schedule on thespectrum.com.
It's that St. George City
Oh, yeah,
website.
City. sgcity.org.
That's the one.
That's it.
Moving on, we had our Gorilla Showcase last Saturday. It was a huge success. Nearly had a packed house, and the fine folks at Megaplex Theaters are actually letting us do an encore. We don't have a date picked yet, but if for those of you who weren't able to attend, not only are we doing an encore, but it's going to be free. It's going to be at Red Cliff Cinemas. We'll probably talk about that on the show next week. Shout out to everybody, all the filmmakers. Their films were creative, innovative, very entertaining. The runner-up went to Lonnie Black and Brandon Tippett, who have made films for everyone in the comps.
Yeah.
They did a film called To Boldly Go. Their theme was Live Long and Prosper from Star Trek. Hilarious.
Very topical.
Yeah. Craig Carter and Matt MacArthur made a film called Teaching an Old Dog New Tricks, and their theme was when I grow up, I want to be president, and they made kind of this funny political satire. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully, when we get that date locked in, we want to invite everyone to come out to encore presentation. We're also hoping to, I know I've been working on a documentary with Sheldon Demke, Bernie Lobb, and Art Kaufman. It's about a musician who performs songs for patients as they're dying. It's this really poignant, haunting.
Speaking of documentaries,
we're going to do
there's a documentary coming out in 2 months called Springsteen and I.
I know. I read about that. We're going to have to talk about that on
wait.
a future show.
I cannot wait.
But we're putting a reel together for this documentary, and we didn't have it finished in time for last week's event. We're hoping we're going to be able to play it at the front of this event. So next week on the show, we'll talk about that. Couple of other quick things. I know we got to go here pretty quick. The Maze Runner new film that's shooting. The only reason I want to bring it up, there's a couple of writers here locally, Jen Bennett, no relation to Bruce Bennett, and James Duckett. They do these podcasts. They do these podcasts. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the website. But there's an author named James Dashner, and he wrote this book called The Maze Runner. It's sort of for the Hunger Games set.
Yeah, right.
It's a post-apocalyptic futuristic story about these kids that get caught up in this big maze and they have to join forces to get out of this maze.
And so what's their relationship to
Well, actually, James and Ben actually got to have an interview. They talked to this guy, and they've got a podcast that they're going to have up in a few days. Give me just a sec, and I will tell you Jen Bennett, if you're listening to this show.
Facebooker.
Facebook Jen Bennett. She will tell you all about these podcasts, and next week on the show, I will get back on and I'll tell you what the pod.
Okay,
what
so
I'm sorry. She just foreverwriters.com. Foreverwriters.com, and I think the podcast with Dashner is going to be up on Monday. So if you're a fan of that book or his work, listen. And they've got a bunch of really great podcasts. You should go over to that site.
So
and check it out.
Should people go see in order?
Okay, you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Weekly Power Rankings, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll just say yes or no.
Okay. Number 5 on my list, 42 with Harrison Ford.
Absolutely.
Terrific movie. Harrison Ford, you're probably right. If this movie would have come out later this year, he probably would have been nominated for an Oscar. Number 4, I know there's no way in heck you're going to say no to this. Jurassic Park 3D.
It's still in the theaters?
It is. It's at Main Street Cinema right now. And if you haven't seen it, this is why the movie theater experience was created. Number 3. Iron Man 3. What can I say? I enjoyed it. I thought Shane Black's offbeat nature really shined through. I greatly enjoyed it.
Star Trek.
Yeah. Number 2 on my list is Star Trek 2, or Star Trek Into Darkness, which even though it pilfers from Wrath of Khan, the stuff that bugged me was nowhere near enough to take me out of this movie. J.J. Abrams directed the heck out of it. I still think Chris Pine owns this movie. I think he's outstanding in it. And number 1 on my list, not necessarily the best movie in theaters, I liked Fast and the Furious 6. It's mindless entertainment. It's got a great sense of family and a multicultural cast, and I think that's a big part of the appeal.
And I would say my list is the same as yours, except changing out Fast and Furious. I'm going to put The Company You Keep. Not that it's a better summer movie than Star Trek or Iron Man 3, but it's a different movie.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for my age group, who look at the movie theater and go, that movie's too loud. That movie's too loud. That movie's too loud. Yeah. Okay, here's a nice, quiet, thought-provoking movie.
And what do we got next week? We got After Earth. M. Night Shyamalan.
Will Smith and his son.
Yeah, I hope it's good. Shyamalan's in dire need of a return.
Does not look good in this.
The animals?
Yeah, and of course I'm watching it on my TV and maybe on the big screen.
You know what I think is funny? Shyamalan's career is almost Shyamalama Ding Dong. Shyamalan's his whole career is predicated on the twist, and I love how he's like, F you, everyone that hates me. I'm just going to put the twist in the title. It's called After Earth. Yeah. I think that's really really funny. I guess it's based off a graphic novel.
I sure like him.
Man, his last couple of movies have not... The Last Turd Bender, ick. Not a fan. Yeah. The Happening, I'll tell you.
We're over time.
Not much happening in The Happening.
Well, we got nobody else coming in. Yeah, let's keep talking.
Let it go.
So how's the family?
The family's good. So I guess...
How about that Benghazi thing? Can you believe it?
How about that Miami Heat thing? Woo! Not just another team.
Okay, people don't want to hear us talking about politics or sports, although we could somewhat intellectually. We could.
That's true. Yes. Well, you could. I don't think
No, we both can talk sports.
We like NBA.
Yeah,
like
how about that Roy Hibbert? See? We know that stuff.
Who?
Paul George.
Let's talk about Cabin in the Woods. You have listened to Film Fanatics. I'm Adam Mast with ZBallman.com and The Independent, and sitting across from me,
Bruce Bennett, film critic for The Spectrum and Daily News. You can read me every Friday in The Spectrum, of course, on my own website, madaboutmovies.org. Thanks, Adam. We will see you next week.
Thank you.